Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid, as we are halfway through the year here in 2024, and sports betting stories are still very prevalent. Probably the biggest sports betting story are the controversies surrounding player suspensions. But maybe the second biggest story is the fact that there's been so much pullback from operators here in the United States, and yet another one leaving the States in a lot of different places, and that is the ever-popular SuperBook out of Las Vegas. Arguably the top sports betting sportsbook in Vegas has decided they no longer want to operate in several states. So let's bring in Pat Evans from Legal Sports Report to get the very latest. And Pat, if anybody's ever been to Vegas and they're just into betting on sports, that is the place to go. So naturally, they thought opening up a sportsbook that people can bet live in a lot of different states would move the needle. Apparently not.
No, I mean, they are now pulling, I think it's 8 states, including, they're partnered with the Orioles in Maryland. They're partnered with the Bengals in Cincinnati, in Ohio. I mean, there's some big partnerships, and they just have not been able to move the needle in terms of those markets. I think our Matt Waters has a great story over at Legal Sports Report. You should go read it. Kind of goes a little bit more in detail than we will today, but like all those states below 0.05 market share, and that's not moving the needle. And like you said, this is a huge retail sports book and even online sports book in Nevada that a lot of people go to, know it. I mean, I think to your point, before the rise of sports betting, if you were talking about sports betting, you're thinking somewhere like the SuperBook in Nevada. And yeah, just haven't been able to move the needle. What's interesting here is that kind of overshadowed another sports book that is pulling out of markets similarly in Betfred. They're still live in a few states, but they said they're pulling out of Ohio. They have already pulled out of Maryland. And those two things were right there on Friday and Saturday, or I think both on Friday. And I mean, that's 2 more sports books that are calling it quits this year. I think that brings us up to 5, maybe, if I'm pulling them up my brain, and that's a lot in one. I mean, when you think about it, how many sports books have been kind of generating noise in the industry, and this one's launching, this brand is here, and they're just not moving the needle, and they say, you know what, it's not worth it. To your point, again, SuperBook has a great business in Las Vegas, so I think they just want to concentrate on what they know and can do well. Of note, they can't do their super contest across state borders per the Wire Act, so I think that probably hurts them a little bit, because that's one of the things they're really known for, where, maybe if they were able to do that, then maybe they'd have a little bit more incentive to stay active in these states. But yeah, 2 more sports books as of last week are calling it quits in the Betfred, sort of, in the U.S. sports betting landscape.
Yeah, and for that super contest, as I've participated in for many years, you have to hire a proxy service to go ahead and place those, not bets, but place those picks for you for the super contest every week. I love those contests and love talking about them here on the show. But unfortunately, as you said, and I don't know, by the way, why one of these companies hasn't come out with that kind of contest. It would be great to play in FanDuel, DraftKings, somewhere else. Okay, so SuperBook stepping back, Betfred stepping back, ESPN Bet having their troubles as well. I mean, that seems like the story that we're sort of headed for here over the next 6 months. And Pat, what I really find interesting about this is that some of these smaller sports betting operators and the ones you're saying they're not getting the market share, they're not even willing to wait, it seems like, for California to go live and Texas to go live, because when those states go live too, you would think there'd be an influx. But I guess that's kind of where we're headed, is the leaders in sports betting are going to continue to be the leaders, TBD, until anything changes soon.
Yeah, I think we're seeing true consolidation at the top. I mean, FanDuel and DraftKings are very clearly 1 and 2 in sports betting handle and market share. BetMGM, Caesars not far behind. Fanatics are right there. And even BetRivers has generated probably enough market share to say this is worth it. And then the rest are just kind of trying to fight out with what's left. And then you have to figure out the business side of it for them. Is that handle and revenue enough to make it worthwhile and have a profit share? And as we mentioned, I mean, multiple books now this year alone have said, no way, we can't do this, from SaharaBet which was only in Arizona, to Unibet and Bet365 saying, this is not 365. We'll talk about them in a minute. Betway, European operators saying this market just isn't us. We're not being very successful. We can't make this work. That's 5 this year. We've got 12, I think, was Matt's count on Saturday when he wrote up the SuperBook story. As since the launch, fell. That's a huge amount of operators in 6 years to say, let's try it. Oops, it didn't work, and pull out. Meanwhile, we've got multiple operators at the top just really raking it in. We've got a few operators, one we'll talk about in a minute, still trying to make it work. You've got Underdog Fantasy that they're making their way with the sportsbook endeavor. So there's still some new, entrants really trying to drum up some business. But for the most part, the small ones, as you're mentioning, they're just struggling to secure any significant market share and seeing that as a problem towards profitability in the long term. So, like you said, you could stick it out for maybe Texas or California. But again, who knows how long that's going to be. And so how much more money do you have to bleed to make sure you're going to hit those populations? And will anything change if you do get to that? And if it doesn't, then you've just wasted even more money. So it's a whole thing. And it's just continuing to be interesting to watch. But between the kind of consolidation and the dropping out of the market to the legislative side where nothing really happened this year in terms of new states legalizing, this has been a really interesting kind of slow negative year in sports betting news, I suppose, if you wanted to kind of qualify it.
Yeah, no, it definitely feels that way. We had the big boom, and now we have some pullback here, which is probably just regression to the mean, is what they call it. It seems probably normal.
True.
All right, so positive story to end with. Bet365, they are launching in a very big market in sports betting in Pennsylvania. Bet365, one of those companies, just as we've talked about, Pat, is very well established all over the world. And so this is the kind of company that things like this make sense for, because again, if it doesn't work, they just go back to doing what they've been doing, a very successful company.
Yeah, so they soft launched late last week into Pennsylvania, as you mentioned, one of the bigger sports betting and online casino states that is out there. And, they've slowly, methodically kind of rolled out. We've always talked about Bet365 since the get-go of being kind of this sleeping giant that's kind of circled. They're huge in Europe. They're huge in the rest of the world. And just kind of been circling the U.S., maybe waiting to see what's working, what's not. They've, dipped their toe in. They launched at the starting line in the likes of Kentucky. They've since opened up in Arizona, which is a nice market. I think they're in 8, maybe 10 markets now. And just kind of slowly coming in. They're starting to gain market share in different places because they do have a very well-known, experienced product. And it seems to be working out for them. And to your point, if in the long term it doesn't work out for them, they can just do as Betway and Unibet have done and pulled back a little bit and say, hey, it didn't work for us, but that's okay. We gave it our best shot. Again, they're giving it their best shot and starting to roll out. So we'll see in the long term if Bet365 can give some of the DraftKings and FanDuels a run for their money in the long run, Fanatics maybe, and kind of, at least make it a little bit more interesting at the top than we've had for the last couple of years.
Yeah, Bet365 very well established in the soccer landscape as well. All right, great to see you, Pat. Thanks for coming on the show, and the great stuff as always. I don't know if I'll see you later this week, but if not, I'll see you next week. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, great as always, Craig.